pray to God that people unite over this, because if they don't, we're going to get rolled over in Australia. Alright, what's news, everyone? Welcome back to the show. This week has been an absolute bombshell in Australia. We have had the introduction of a new bill into Parliament called the Communications Legislation Amendment Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill of 2024. It was brought into Parliament maybe like 3 days ago on the 12th. And it is essentially a bill discussing how the Australian government will use a secondary organisation to govern all of social media and all the social media platforms that we use in our day-to-day lives. This is the bill here. It is about 73 pages of absolute jargon. It is completely just confusing. You cannot understand it to save your life. It is a brutal read. Brutal, just full of way too many words to describe just basic things. But I will be skimming through this a little bit. I'll be showing the main important factors in this bill, as well as describing who this body is going to be. It's meant to be governing these social media platforms, and how this kind of correlates to the Digital ID bill, which has been passed through Parliament, which is meant to come into place around the 1st of December, and what that means for Australia. Because it's not looking good, guys. It's not looking good. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the weeds of it, I guess. So yeah, it's been passed, and essentially I'll read the start of it. I'll essentially give you the kind of introduction to it, as far as I understand it. So this is the bill here. It doesn't explain who wrote the bill, who's kind of brought this information together. But anyway, it goes into it and talks about how it's mainly trying to amend these acts within the Australian law, and it keeps going on. But it's sort of, where is the important part? I'll show you. So if we keep moving down, it talks about misinformation. So the whole thing is obviously about misinformation, about trying to govern that for the safety, of course, of Australian citizens and the country. So where this is the main crux. This is probably the biggest screen that you'll find, and which is what most people are sharing around in regards to this bill. So, meaning of serious harm. Okay, so they're going to use this organization called the ACMA to govern social media platforms to reduce harm for the Australian people in regards to what content you post. Okay, so any content you post that relates to harm, the ACMA will use their power to regulate you using the platforms themselves. Okay, so they're kind of like blackmailing the platforms. So, meaning of serious harm. For the purposes of this schedule, serious harm is harm to the operation or integrity of the Commonwealth, state, territory, or local government electoral or referendum process, or harm to the public health in Australia, including to the efficacy of preventative health measures in Australia, or vilification of a group in Australian society distinguished by race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status, disability, nationality, or national or ethnic origin, or vilification of an individual because of a belief that the individual is a member of such a group, or intentionally inflicted physical injury to an individual in Australia, or imminent damage to critical infrastructure or disruption of emergency services in Australia, or imminent harm to the Australian economy, including harm to public confidence in the banking system or financial markets. Insane, significant and far-reaching consequences for the Australian community or a segment of the Australian community, or severe consequences for the individual in Australia. So, a lot to unpack. Essentially, though, this is saying that if you criticize any of these groups here, for one, that's serious harm. So the government can now use the ACMA to enforce rules to, who knows what to you for talking about these groups. You apparently cannot talk about the banking system or financial markets. So I guess you can't criticize stock movements, or you can't talk about crypto. Okay, that's apparently fair. And of course, public health. So we obviously had the COVID scandals. We obviously had the pandemic, which is what I'll call it, where we all got forced to take the jabs. which we're still waiting to see the consequences of. And if those consequences become too obvious to ignore, people are obviously going to use social media to speak up about that. And this bill would essentially stop that. Stop it in its tracks, because we're obviously starting to see the consequences of those lockdowns and of the jabs. So anyway, that's what the harm is all about. And then the other more important part is what the content means. So if we go up again, so here's the definitions of content. Okay, so content means form of text, data, speech, music, or other sounds. So imagine, got that Deutschland song. Dun, 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 dun. So you can maybe use that that song in a TikTok, and then the government could say, oh yeah, you're now harming minorities because you're using that song, which is sharing harm. Who knows? They could take that jump though. Visual images, animated or otherwise, so a GIF, an animated GIF, any of this stuff. So this is all what content means to them. And here it sort of gives the summary of what they're kind of talking about. The ACMA also has a graduated set of powers in relation to the misinformation and disinformation of some kinds of digital communication platform. So the ACMA, that's what it's all really about. It's about these guys coming in to save you from harm that you might experience on social media. And it's insane. So yeah, I wouldn't dare go through this entire thing, because like I've said, I've tried to read this. I've gone through every page, and I barely understand what they're talking about. The only thing I understand, the gist of this whole thing, is what I've said already, that the ACMA is going to just govern social media and threaten them. So I'll move on. I might come back to this a bit and get into some of the more weeds, but you can read it for yourself. You should be able to find this pretty easily. So I'll move on. So who is the ACMA? Okay, because I've never heard of them before. As an Australian citizen, I've never heard of them before. So I'm like, okay, who the fuck are you? And what are you doing? And where'd you come from? And who's giving you this power? So this is the ACMA, the Australians Communication and Media Authority. So I guess we just have this group now as well. You've got the NDIS, you had the APRA, or whatever it is, the Aboriginal one, ASIC, whatever it is, I forget what it's called. And we've also got this now, Australian Communications and Media Authority. So they're there to regulate communications and media. And they're essentially just a arm of the government that is fixated on online interactions. So they're there just to police anything they see online. And of course, they kind of paint it as, they're helping you with gambling, they're helping you with scams and all these kind of things. But really, it's just about more power, more control, more governing, less freedom for the Australian people, less freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to organise, freedom of the press, any freedom that we have in Australia, this is threatening. This body is threatening. So I see these guys as the enemy. Okay, they're traitors to Australia. What else can you say? So we'll move on. So who really are they though? Because we get these groups, the ACMA, these groups. They have these names, these acronyms, and we're like, who the fuck are you? Where are you from? Who's involved in this? And this group has been lucky enough, or graceful enough, whatever you want to say, to show who they are. So I'm going to show you who the people in this group actually are. And you'll notice something funny about this group. And I'm going to show you. So let's go through who are the leaders of this group. So, the authority. So we have the authority that makes decisions on important matters for the ACMA. So, this is your chair. This old boomer-looking lady named Narita O'Loughlin. She started in 2017, and she is So this lady, this boomer, might even be older than a boomer, is in charge of all your social media. This is the person that has the wisdom to know how to govern everything that you post and do on social media. Let that sink in. We'll keep going on. Who else is involved in this? Oh, another old, middle-aged white woman. Beautiful. Okay, let's keep going on. Oh, okay, a white guy. That's kind of cool, at least, I guess. Anyway, this guy really is just involved in copyright and he's just been like helping with copyright. So he's not really that important. And as you'll see, he's just a full-time member. That's his title. Just full-time member. No, doesn't really have any power. Just full-time member. Deputy chair, PSMM chair, whatever. Keep going on. Another full-time member. Another middle-aged white woman, white Karen. Another full-time member. Another middle-aged white woman. And another part-time associate. Another middle-aged white woman. Oh, look at that. Another middle-aged white woman. So they're all... So all your social media activity is going to be governed by a handful of middle-aged white women and one white dude who is involved in copyright law. And yeah, that's essentially who the group is. That's who they are. So I think that's hilarious. And I posted a meme the other day on TikTok showing like, liberal white women are destroying Australia. And I showed Reagan, and I showed that Muslim senator who just did the skibbity toilet speech. And after seeing this and posting that, I'm pretty sold that I think white women are quite literally destroying our country for us. And there's multiple reasons why I believe this. I think that women are more programmed for security and safety than they are for freedom. And what I mean by that is that their priorities lie in security and safety. So these women obviously are bosses. They might be, Australian government officials. They might be globalist pawns, World Economic Organization groups, whatever you want to call them. And these women are just like, oh, well, I'm in a safe position of power in this job. And if I just follow my boss's commands, I'll keep this job and I'll be safe for the future. They don't care about the country. They don't care about you. They don't care about security or freedom or liberty. They care about themselves. They care about filling their pockets up so they're safe while the world is burning, essentially. Because the world is burning. Everything's falling apart. But these women are completely safe as long as they follow their orders. So I think that's why you don't see a lot of men, strong men, in any of these positions ever, because they just would not follow the commands of the oppressors, really. They would most likely stand up in one way, shape, or form. These women don't. These women will just obey. And I think there's also a psychological part to this. Like, for me as a man, I got to say that it's a lot harder for me to be rageful at these women. I see these women and their faces, and I don't feel threatened. This guy I can get mad at, even though he's just a copyright dude. But this guy I can get mad at. But when I see women, I'm just like, you fools. You fools. Like, ladies, wake up, would you? So I think there's like a psychological aspect to this where it almost like helps to keep men docile when you put women leaders in power. Because men just don't want to fucking try and argue with women because it's just impossible. So that's my takes on all that. I think that's why we got so many women in these organizations. And I also think they just power trip when they get into these groups. They think that the feminism, the postmodern ideas of gender identity and all that kind of stuff just trips them out. They get into these positions of power and they feel like, oh, I'm finally like equal to a man, and I'm just gonna like ride this to the grave and just become like the ultimate girl boss. And they're just completely delusional to what they're actually doing. They're useful idiots essentially. So anyway, these are the people. And then it goes on to explain more about themselves. That's a double up. So this is the entire mind map, or PowerPoint, whatever you want to call it. It's a presentation of who's involved in this organization. So you've got that lady we just saw, Narita, lovely lady, I'm sure. And then I want you to also notice who else we've got here. Karina, Chapman, Carolyn, Samantha, Anna, Catriona, and then the agency divisions, we've got Kathy, Autumn, Helen, and actually some dudes, okay? But anyway, the majority of the people involved in this organization are all women, pretty much. Carol, Rochelle, Samantha, Alana. There's some men in the lower kind of fields. I guess this is where they kind of make up for it and say, hey, there are men, we're pretty equal. But most of the people that seem to be in charge are women, which is also kind of plays into what I was just talking about. So it's a really weird organization. I've never heard of it. Don't know where this has come from. And it's just such an odd, suspicious thing. Anyway, what we do, okay, so what we do, set and manage rules about, I'll restate that. So this is what the ACMA does, okay, what they actually do. So they set and manage rules about communications and media services and markets, license people, organizations, and products to operate in Australia, look into complaints and problems, and take action when rules aren't being followed, plan and manage the airwaves, and make space for new services like 5G. What does that even mean? They plan and manage the airwaves. I haven't looked into this yet. We manage Australia's spectrum at local and international levels. This ensures we can use it effectively and minimize interference between bands and services. So yeah, I mean, I guess they just have complete access to all your data, all your airways, all your Wi-Fi signals, which is just madness. Maybe they can hear me right now. Who knows? Tinfoil hat. Anyway, and they, if you complain about anything online, I guess it comes to these people. So that's essentially what the ACMA is. The only other thing I wanted to kind of talk about was they have two really important segments on their website. One talking about combating scams, which talks about how it's like intercepted phone calls. And it's worked with Telstra to intercept phone calls to stop the scammers. And that also plays into like, the Optus dropout. Maybe they're using all that to kind of just bring in this kind of monitoring of like your cell phone data. I don't know. Like how far will they take this? I can't say. But they are talking about combating scams, which means they have to have some access to cell phone numbers, signals. Like how would you know who the scammer is? I don't know. And the other really suspicious thing is they have a whole document talking about reducing the income. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Where is it? They have a whole document talking about climate, actually. Talking about climate change and net zero. Let me see if I can find this quickly. Yeah, here it is. So the ACMA emissions reduction plan, talking about making sure they get to net zero. So I would also imagine if you talk about anything related to environmental issues, whether it be cloud seeding or, climate change or whatever you want to talk about, well, you know where they're at. You know what they're set on, which is net zero, no fossil fuels. So they've given their bias in that regards, which is really weird because they're meant to just be this communications media governor, and yet they talk about emission reduction. It's like, okay, is this really your business? Is this really your place? But again, it's about they're showing their bias. They're showing their opinions front and center. And so, you can really expect them to be using their boot for that purpose as well. So that's essentially the summary. And it's a mind fuck. You're like, okay, I guess we've got to deal with these guys too. Like, it reminds me of when COVID was happening and we had the public service announcements and like the public health safety commissioner, all that kind of bullshit. And it's like these people came into power. They destroyed the country for a couple of years. They just caused so much damage to the country. And then the whole organization, the whole group, all the people, Gladys Berejiklian, all these guys we had, they just disappear. And then they're never held accountable. And I imagine that would be the same exact thing that would happen to all these lovely ladies. And he's pretty much a lady. I'm going to call him a lady too. All these ladies, they'll do the damage. And if shit hits the fan, they'll just run off with a paycheck. Like always. Okay, so that's kind of the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about today. And then I'm going to kind of show you just some stuff on X that kind of relates to this all and give you a bit more context. So, so this is Australians versus the agenda. And they kind of became a thing during COVID. So you can look into them. Great page. True freedom fighters for Australia. Anyway, they got some great media regarding all this kind of stuff. So let's look at some of that. So this is like the lady. This is like the Witch of the West right now. This lady is really pushing for it. She's kind of like the figurehead, talking head about this. So let's look at some of what she has to say.
This is very important for Australians. It's important for our security when we've got our top spy saying that mis and disinformation poses a threat to our democracy. We also have the head of defence saying the same thing, our regulators saying the same thing. And we know that some 75% of Australians are concerned about the harmful impacts of mis and disinformation. This really goes to not only protecting Australians, but protecting our democratic way of life.
And when will you introduce the bill, and when do you expect it to be passed? When do you want it passed?
I intend to introduce it in this sitting. We would prefer to have this passed this year, but again, this is in the hands of the Parliament. We intend to also self-refer this to committee because, being a novel bill, we want this subjected to all the parliamentary scrutiny that would otherwise be afforded it.
Have you left it too late in the term?
I think what's important here is that we have done the hard yards in terms of consultation. We released an exposure draft last year. We consulted widely on it. We made, even in January last year, our decision clear that we would legislate in this area.
Right. So, misinformation, 75% of Australians are worried about misinformation. Where's that stat from? Okay, where was the study on that? Can I see that data, please? So just lies. 100%. We don't give a fuck. We want our freedom of speech back. Okay, we've been locked down for like 3 years, and we've been censored for the past like 5 years, if not more. Like, get a fucking grip, lady. We don't give a shit about misinformation. Maybe some boomers who are watching too much Channel 7, but not us. Anyway, also the question you got to ask is, who defines what misinformation and disinformation is? Can anyone tell me? Because I don't understand it. And they don't really give clear explanations. So anyway, we'll keep going on. So her name is Michelle Rowland, of course. And she's just an absolute, shill, really a shill. There's more of
I'll start from this position first. The reason why we're doing this is to protect children. That's the first reason why we're doing it. If we need to take on big tech during it, then absolutely, the government's committed to doing that. We need to make sure that we get the enforcement regime right. We need to make sure we get the implementation right. Kieran, there is no government or regulator in the world who has done this to the point where we can just take it off the shelf and say, we'll implement this. That's why, and it is an unusual thing for governments to be intervening at this level. But again, the why is important. It's about the safety and the health of young Australians. I'll start from this.
Of course, we heard that before, safety and health and safety. Talking about taking care of children. Sorry, lady, I don't think this is your place to be taking care of our children. I believe that's the parents' role, and that's the parents' responsibility. That's just my opinion, though. But she's just a lunatic, absolute narcissistic lunatic, power tripping on the power she's been given by the government, and she's just completely out of touch. So yeah, we're looking at this kind of stuff. Methods for online age verification includes a digital identity program. E-childhood technology is recommended to verify those who are under 18 years of age. So this is where we get really into how is this going to be implemented? What is going to be done about this kind of stuff? So obviously it's being very supported by pretty much the entire government. Okay. You got Bill Gates, apparently.
Every country's struggling to find that boundary. The U.S. is a tough one because, we have the notion of the First Amendment. And so what are the exceptions, like yelling fire in a theater, and because you're anonymous online, it can be worse. I do think over time, with things like deep fakes, most of the time you're online, you're going to want to be in an environment where the people are truly identified. That is, they're connected to.
So it's all about taking away any kind of autonomy of the human being. Like you cannot, it's like, no, you don't have the sense or the capability to determine what's right or wrong, what's real or fake anymore. We have to take care of you. We have to teach you and show you the way to make sure you don't hurt the nation, hurt the financial systems, God forbid. So it's just absolute madness. Got the e-safety commissioner talking about how they want to launch this tech. And so this has been announced. This has been set in stone. I'll show you. I posted this here. This is the main one. So this is the government release, official media release, talking about how it's not going to start until about the October 7th. So this is when the trial, the age assurance technology trial, that's what it's called, is going to be implemented into social media, I guess, into online technology. I don't know where the boundaries will be, but it's coming in on the 7th of October. This is the same date in which the Parliament is going to be having their second sitting of this bill, which is very, so like, Australians can barely keep up with one topic. There's going to be two topics happening at the same time. It's very likely that this will get brushed under the rug and the people won't even know about it. But yeah, that's essentially what's happening. This is the lady. This is her Twitter. Go tell her what you think. That's the only hope. And, there was another thing I did want to show. So if I can find that same document, I believe it was on the document. Bear with me. I believe they actually give their bloody locations, which is so funny. It was somewhere... Yeah, so this is the actual office. These are the offices of the ACMA. So if you're curious, I've now shown you who's involved in this organization and where they actually are located. And just remember, this is the group that is going to dictate all of your social media use. The bill pretty much talks about how they'll be able to demand any kind of document they want from their social media platforms to be given to them. So this is where they are. This is where they're from. If they're around you, do what you will with that information. But just so you know, they publicly post this information. So, where does that leave us? So I essentially think what's going to happen is they're going to use this bill and the way this bill is written to kind of say, because I'll show you, let's get into the bill. Let's get into the bill, shall we? Why not? Okay, this is like the end of the show. That's the main points I want to talk about. So this bill here, there's some really weird stuff. Really weird stuff. So you've got obviously the definition of content here. You've got yada 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 using serious harm. We've covered serious harm. Exclusion. Anyway, where it defines disinformation somewhere. If I can find that again, it's a huge document. Misinformation codes. Yeah, here we go. So section of the yep. Let's see if I can find it. Anyway, as you can see, just from like scrolling through it, it's just a brutal read. Brutal read. There was a point I was looking at earlier. Okay, this is a very important point too. Division 382, this section 82, whatever it's called. So, the ACMA may, by legislative instrument, make rules, the digital platform rules, prescribed to matters required or permitted by this act to prescribe by the digital platform rules, yada yada. Yeah, this thing here, right? It says, note, an assessment of whether digital platform rules are compatible with human rights must be prepared and included in the explanatory statement for the rules. See section 9 of the human rights. So it's like, okay, we're going to implement these rules, but if do these kind of like interfere with human rights? I don't know. We'll have to talk about that later. So they kind of just brush it out of the way. And it says, to avoid doubt, the digital platform rules may not do the following: create an offence or civil penalty, provide powers of arrest or detention, or entry, search, seizure, impose a tax. So essentially saying that, okay, these rules though, this isn't the armed force or the state. We can't use that. But if you've got these rules in place where they can access any of your data within social media, then you've got the digital ID bill, which will link your social media to your identity, your national identity, your address, or your private information. These rules might not bring the police to your door, but that ID bill might do so. You're breaking some sort of e-safety commissioner law or rule, misinformation, all this kind of stuff. So they're kind of like saving their ass here with this, saying that this won't bring in martial law, right, and bring in like thought police, but the digital ID will. So they're kind of just like separating themselves a bit from that in this part here. But anyone with a bit of sense knows what this is going to be used for, which is to control freedom of speech in this country. And as I've been talking about constantly, the main issues we have in this country are things like mass immigration, the financial systems, the housing crisis, property investment, property portfolios, obviously just government corruption, government overreach, police brutality. There's so many problems in this country right now. We're getting just swarmed with illiterate migrants who aren't, the migrants that are coming in aren't going to be able to understand any of this. As a fluent, I think somewhat well-read Australian English-speaking citizen, I can barely understand and comprehend what this is talking about. These migrants have no clue. These migrants are just going along with anything that they're told because they think, I'll still make better money and have a better standard of living in this country than I will in my country. So they're not going to have a clue. They're going to be useful idiots for the state. It's the true Australian citizens who understand what the government is capable of that are going to be just completely destroyed by this, because they don't want to follow. They know what freedom in Australia is like. They don't want to follow these laws or these rules. So, if this is passed, it's going to be, I think it's game over. I hate to be a pessimist or fatalist, but if this is passed, there'll be no more freedom of speech online. This is the last stand, I think, for Australia, because you go into the streets, they bring the whole police brigade, they bring the whole cavalry, they bring their horses and their rubber bullets and their pepper spray. So we retreat to online. We make anonymous accounts, or if you're brave, you make a public account and you try and talk about it. But if they do bring this in, it's going to be like Julian Assange over the entire country. Everyone's going to be locked down. Accounts cancelled. Accounts banned. Nope, you can't use your ID to make an account anymore. You're banned from social media. You're banned from the online world. And I could see people falling through the cracks. If they make the standards of living, if they make the basic necessities of living in Australia too difficult to get, like a house, like rentals, food, where you need a proper job, a full-time job just to have that. If they risk your employment by implementing these rules and making you a pariah, social pariah, you lose your job, you fall through the cracks, homeless, boom, you're done. You've fallen through the cracks. You're now just waste. You're the waste. And they'll replace you with some immigrant. And that's what we're looking at. That's the reality. So maybe I'll have to move to Poland. I'm thinking about learning Polish. And maybe I'll have to run away. Because this would be a nightmare. But yeah, that's about it from me. It's about all I have to say about this. I think that's all there is to say about this, really. There's some great sources, I would say. Maria Z did a really in-depth stream talking about digital ID and how that kind of coincides with the WHO and the World Economic Forum and their plans for that and all that kind of stuff. So I recommend looking into that if you want to understand a bit more about that. I'll also show you this. One glimmer of hope, I guess, if I can get it up, is I did a post on this. So, obviously, so that's another thing. So Elon Musk called the government out, which is pretty big, actually. I should cover that before I pack up. I should cover that earlier. So, if I can find it. So yeah, Elon Musk straight up called out the Australian government, calling them fascists, right? And because they're saying that they want to tax them or fine them 5% of their global revenue for failing to prevent misinformation. And he called them fascists. And you had Albanese respond saying that, the Australian people, how he speaks, just defending it. Anyway, this also covered just the main parts of the bill, covered that lady as well. But the last part is, there's been one politician I've seen named John Ruddock, MLC, in Sydney, who's already tried to plan a protest against this. Speaker's Corner, so 11:30 a.m., 28th of September, stop the misinformation bill. Speaker's Corner, pray to God that people unite over this, because if they don't, we're going to get rolled over in Australia. So, yeah, that's about it. Tell your friends, spread the news, learn what you can, be brave, okay? Because there's literally nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose. There's no better place to go, really, hardly. And, this comfort that we've experienced in the past 10 years, past 15 years, it's disappearing. And there's nothing that's going to be left if we let it fade away. Okay, so fight. You got to fight for your right to party. And everything sucks. Enjoy it while it lasts, even if as much as you can. Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Till next time. Peace out. Much love. Bye bye.